This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up? Real MVPs, Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And Brandon, you know what, I'm going to be honest, he's not on location, guys. Brandon got a little homesick, was like, you know what, I got to go home. I'm going to go about, an hour and a half from where we are? About almost an hour and a half, 2 hours. He's like, I'm going to go see Mom and Pops and everyone before Thanksgiving. So we're doing a phoner again today, like we have the last couple of weeks. And we got a jam-packed show. I mean, first off, we got to start the show off with, if I had a trumpet, Brandon, I'd be playing taps, because the Brandon Swanson Oklahoma State curse, I didn't think it was ever going to die. It almost lived on, but it finally died this week at the hands of the Oklahoma Sooners. But it was a thriller with your curse. And were you actually watching that game? Were you sweating it out the whole way?
I was watching that game. I was watching that one, and I was going back and forth between Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And I was going over to the Iowa and Northwestern game as well. Two really good games that were played this week. And one very high scoring, one not so much.
Yeah, I was very upset that Oklahoma State couldn't get the win, because I'll be honest, I know you hated the curse. You're not like me. Like, I know onside kick-wise, I love that Jacksonville lost again, because my kiss of death gets to live on and does not die. But you absolutely cannot stand the curse, but we no longer have to talk about it because it is dead. The Sooners have put it to bed, but we got a jam-packed show. We're going to be talking actually basketball to start. We got a really interesting topic with the Duke Blue Devils that we just got to hit after their first two games of the season. Then we're going to jump right into college football, talking about the Syracuse Notre Dame game that's going to be going on this weekend, then take a look at Alabama yet again and kind of look at who will be the best chance to upset them, if any. Will it be Georgia or will it be the Clemson Tigers? But before we get into everything, quick housekeeping here at the beginning. First off, make sure you check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. Down below in the description, make sure you help support the channel. We cannot do what we do each and every week for you guys without the help of our patrons. We love our patrons, and if you join us at the $10 tier, you get to join a podcast every month. You are at that tier. Then, secondly, if you want to support the channel also, get yourself an MVP t-shirt. We got the store down below in the description. You can also get it at mostvaluablepodcast.com, where you can catch MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, go on to iTunes and Apple Podcasts. And Brandon, this is where I have to do my annual check to see how many ratings we got.
Not annual, buddy. It's weekly.
Weekly. Did I say annual again? Annual is like yearly.
You like saying annual a lot when it's week to week.
It just sounds like a better word. And nope, Dan H. is still the leader in the clubhouse. He is the last one. He gave us a 5-star review, so thank you again to Dan H. And if you want to be a cool MVP bro or a real MVP, go ahead and give us a rating on iTunes and let us know why you like listening to the show each and every week. But Brandon, let's jump into everything, and let's first get the college basketball out of the way. Our first official college basketball topic of the year, and it is about these Duke Blue Devils. They are 2 games into the season. I told you beforehand, I don't know. Actually, wait, this is our second one. We talked about Jonte Porter and that injury I forgot about, but 2 games into the year, I told you beforehand, I thought it was an atrocity that this team was not the number 1 ranked team going into the season. They win 118-84 against number 2 Kentucky, blow them out of I think it's Fields Baker House in Indianapolis, where the Pacers play. Then this past Sunday, they beat Army 94-72. And like Dave texted us, he said, well, Army lost by less points than Kentucky. So does that mean Army is better than Kentucky by the transitive property? That aside, I'm going to ask you this, Brandon, before we get into what we like, what we don't like about this Duke team. I'm going to be frank with you. Is this Duke team going to go undefeated this season?
You know, Ricky, I don't think so. And the reason I don't think that is because I don't think it's the same thing in college basketball as it is in college football. Asking if Alabama will go undefeated this season, yes. Yes, most likely they will, because they're a powerhouse team and they're only playing 12 games in their regular season.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's different. I mean, there's completely a difference between the two. College basketball, many more games. The talent, I think, is a little closer as well. I mean, even Alabama going up against some of these good teams that we see, they're not on the same level. These teams are not on the same level as Alabama. I think there's more teams closer to the level of Duke than there would be in college football for Alabama. So that's kind of my comparison there. And it's really hard to go undefeated in a basketball season. I mean, it's like you're asking the same thing. I'll bring a comparison closer to home for basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Will the Golden State Warriors go undefeated? No, they're a great team, and they'll probably win the championship again. It's kind of become the whole thing in college football with Alabama. Will Alabama lose this week? I'm saying no until they do.
Yeah.
And it's like, will the Warriors lose the championship this year? No, I'm saying they're going to win it until they do not. And that's where it is for college basketball with Duke. They're an absolutely great team. Maybe they only lose 4 games, 5 games, something like that in their season. But they won't go undefeated.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I'm going to be completely honest. I am on the other side of the table than you, because the reason why I wanted to talk about this was not only because they blew out Kentucky and Zion Williamson looks amazing and RJ Barrett looks great and Cam Reddish, they're all averaging over 20 points a game for Duke. But like, after just seeing this team play the exhibition games, and I know that they're playing teams like they're playing a D2 team and then they're playing a team like Ferris State. So it's not competition that they're going to see in the regular season in D1. But I just looked at it and I went, can this team do what my Illinois Fighting Illini in 2004, 2005, I believe, if I'm not off on there. Yeah, 04, 05. What that team could not do, will this team be able to do it? And I look at it, and I mean, I look at their schedule, and this team has a shot. Now, before I say that, they're probably going to run right through their undefeated schedule or their non-conference schedule, I mean. Because, like, Eastern Michigan, San Diego State, Indiana, Stetson, Hartford, Yale, Princeton, Texas Tech. I'm even putting Clemson on there, and Clemson starts the ACC. I don't think they're going to lose a game the rest of 2018. To me, the interesting part for them comes Clemson, Wake Forest, and Florida State will probably be wins, but I can't wait to see what this team does against a team like Syracuse, against a team like Virginia, who are going to be some of the top dogs in the ACC. And I'm even going to throw North Carolina in there as well because they have the rivalry. What are they going to do when they get to conference time? Because I feel like this Duke team is just going to roll through non-conference. It's just going to be, everyone's going to be hyped up about Zion Williamson. This team's going to be great. They're going to be blowing everyone out. And then once we turn the calendar to 2019, once that ACC schedule starts January 5th, then we might start to see the little bit of adversity that some people, like I know Sean Anderson, wants this team to go through before he starts crowning people like Zion Williamson.
Well, and Duke needs to be able to go through that adversity as well, and most likely they will see it. Almost every team sees it at some point during their season, because if they don't, then you kind of go back to the 2013-2014 season where they really didn't see a whole lot of it. They go, 26-8, and they lose to Mercer in the first round, 78-71. And I feel like this is a little similar in terms of that. Since that time, this is like one of the most talked about Duke teams since that 2013-14 season, where they had Rodney Hood, they had Jabari Parker, they had Rashid Suleiman, they had these guys, this really solid core group of guys that was getting it done for them, that was really rolling through so many teams. Yes, they lost to Kansas. They lost to Arizona. They lost to Syracuse in an overtime that year, and a North Carolina and Virginia. They still had those losses, but it was still such a talked up team. Like, this team is going places. They are going to go very far. And then poof, in round two, technically second round, but their first game that they play, they're out. And you don't want that with this Duke team. Well, of course, North Carolina fans do, but Duke fans and college basketball fans don't want that with this Duke team. They want to see this Duke team go as far as they possibly can, and many people believe, and if you just look at how they played, believe that can be to the national championship game, which is exactly where Duke was then in 14-15. That's the last time they won it, when they won it over Wisconsin. But this is a team that's just so talked up, Ricky. There's so much hype with this team. I don't want it to be where all they end up riding is the hype train, and that's all that happens. And then they don't live up to that hype. They need to do more than just hype, and certainly they have so far. But I'm saying hype will only carry you so far. You need to also continue to show the results and have games like you had against Kentucky, where you deliver the worst loss for John Calipari in his entire career. Those are more the type of games that Duke needs to be able to produce, I think, to really show people that they're for real and they're not just a couple of good games in them type of hype. But when you look at that core group for Duke right now, when you look at Zion Williamson, when you look at R.J. Barrett, when you look at Cam Reddish, these guys are so good, and they can do it from all over the court. That is the most appealing thing for anyone watching anything on Duke, and that's the most dangerous thing for any opposing coach. How do you stop them? How do you stop them? Because if you stop them from shooting the three, they'll just drive on you. If you stop them from driving, they'll just hang out and shoot a three. They're so potent, and it's not just one of them. It's not just one of them. It's all three of them. And that's kind of what we're looking at here. So there's a lot of things working. There's a lot of pieces right now for Duke, and I think they just need to continue on the track that they're going and keep that pedal to the metal.
So, and the other thing that I'm kind of looking at is the last team to be, because I mentioned the Illinois team that they only had 2 losses all year, where they went undefeated, lost the last game of the regular season to Ohio State. It was a heartbreaker. And then they didn't lose again until the national championship, although they had that adversity game that Sean talked about on the fast break against Arizona in the tournament that went to overtime I believe that was the Sweet 16, because every March 26th I watch that overtime as tradition. But the last team to be in this discussion, and I know people are going to get upset. Guys, we're only 2 games into the year. Cool it. But the last team to be compared to the undefeated teams in college basketball was the 2014-2015 Kentucky Wildcats. That team that went all the way to the Final Four and then lost in the Final Four. And I want to say they lost to Wisconsin that year. Let me see. I'm gonna bring it up really quick. Yeah, they lost to Wisconsin in the Final Four, and I believe that was the year that Duke actually won at the Grayson Allen National Championship against Wisconsin. Was what happened the game after, but that was the last time we saw a team go through just every single game that counted. The only game they technically lost was an exhibition one where they played against the Dominican Republic that didn't really count before losing to Wisconsin in the Final Four. But this was a team that had Devin Booker, who is one of the top NBA players right now, Karl Anthony Towns, who's an NBA pro. You've got Willie Cauley-Stein, NBA pro. This team was stacked with NBA talent. They had, like I said, Karl Anthony Towns. They had Devin Booker, and Devin Booker didn't even start on that team. That was Aaron Harrison, and they had the Harrison twins, who were pretty good in college, although they didn't pan out in the NBA.
And to me, Ricky, just to jump in really quick.
Go ahead.
I don't really care what they've done in the NBA.
Well, what I'm saying
that does not matter. There have been a number of players who have been made for college basketball only, and that has been their kingdom, and they have just absolutely shined in college. But then they haven't really gone on to be anything in the NBA. That doesn't do much for me. I don't care if you went on to be great in the NBA or not. You just need to be really, really good in college here. And I mean, these three players that we're talking about really from Duke, I don't see how they wouldn't be great in the NBA. But that's just kind of what I'm making. It doesn't really necessarily mean anything if they went on to be great in the NBA or not. If they were great in college, that's all that really matters for this argument.
You're kind of
to make the case here.
I'm going to say you're kind of right, because like that Illinois team I brought up, everyone except for Darren Williams, like there were 4 or 5 pros, but like Darren Williams is the only one that people remember. The point I'm trying to make is like you've got Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker who can ball even at the next level, and this Duke team has arguably the 3 guys this year that you and I don't know if we're going to debate it. After 2 games, I can't debate it. Zion's clearly my number one, but there are people that like R.J. Barrett better than Zion. These are the 3 guys that either in our big boards or in mock drafts are going to be 1, 2, and 3. It looks like for most of the year. And that to me is the big reason why this team, I'm going to predict it. I think they will go undefeated. However, I do think that this team is going to face adversity this season because much like that Kentucky team in 2014, 2015, the SEC that year, probably not as tough of a basketball conference. I mean, like the only ranked team was Arkansas at the end of the year. They went 13-5. But like other than that, you have like 4, 11, and 7 teams in the conference, 9-9, 8-10. It's like they didn't really have any other powers besides Kentucky, where in the ACC, this Duke team is going to have to challenge that Syracuse zone. They're going to have to go up against a Virginia team that is well coached and has a guy like DeAndre Hunter, who plays good defense, and he's going to be paired up on one of these 3 Dukies. And then they got to go and play North Carolina because they have Nasir Little, and plus in those games, in the Tar Heel Duke games, throw everything you know out the window because in those rivalry games, anything can happen.
I think that the biggest adversity that Duke may face this season is if one of the big 3 gets injured.
True.
If one of the big 3 has an off game.
Mm-hmm.
So far, in the first 2 games that we've seen from the regular season, R.J. Barrett has averaged 28 points, Zion Williamson 27.5, and Cam Reddish 23.5. The next best is Jack White with 7.5 points, and then Trey Jones with 7. This is going to be the issue for Duke, is that everything is going to be placed on these 3 kings right now of college basketball. And if one of the kings loses his scepter during the game and struggles or is shut down, or like I said, if, God forbid, there's an injury to one, to multiple, if multiple have a bad game, off game, does Duke have enough on their bench or on the floor of the remaining starters to get something going, to kickstart offense? We haven't seen it because they haven't needed to. There will be a game, and I most likely would believe there will be multiple games where they will have to, because this won't be every single game. It's great now. It's great now. It's always great when it's good and when it's going well. But what happens when it's not? And that's for when we would look multiple times at Grayson Allen. Everything was great when things were going well for Duke. But when things weren't going well, he's tripping guys. He's having a temper tantrum. He's doing this, he's doing that. And it may have been just towards him personally with his own character. But how does everyone else handle it? How does the rest of the team handle it? How do they ensure that they still can win without one of those guys producing? or if one, like I said, if one of them gets injured. That's the biggest thing right now for Duke and that's always the problem when you have things like this for any team. When you look at a team and say, okay, they've got 1, 2, or 3 in this case, big players for them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're able to take one away, how good are they still? Do they have enough to come up? Does Jack White and Trey Jones have what it takes to be there, and we just haven't seen it yet? And that might be the case. We just haven't seen it yet. But there will come the game where we're going to have to see it. And we're going to see whether or not Duke has what it takes without those 3 guys performing at the highest level every single game.
Well, and the guy, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, the guy that is most important to the point that you just made to me is Zion Williamson, where
Agreed.
I feel like if they lose Cam Reddish to injury, this Duke team might not be undefeated caliber, but can still be a championship team. If they lose R.J. Barrett, they take a bigger hit in my mind than Cam Reddish, but still have the firepower to be a championship level team. If this team to me loses Zion Williamson, they will be mere mortals. And the reason why I say that is R.J. Barrett's a scorer. Cam Reddish can score, but really it's also, he's more of the guy that if he, 7 of 13 from 3 in the second game, 3 of 18 in the first game, but he goes to the line, and when he goes to the line, he hits those foul shots. Also, he can grab some rebounds if you need him to. Zion Williamson, in 2 games to me, does everything. He blocks the ball. He rebounds the ball. He shoots from the outside. He goes to the foul line, and he shoots with good percentages from the foul line. He'll grab a couple boards. He'll block shots. I probably said those already. And he doesn't get in a ton of foul trouble. Only 5 fouls through 2 games. 3 has been his highest. And he's a guy that's consistent with his field goals. 13 and 14 attempts respectively, 11 shots made in each game. And this is a guy that if he goes down, they're going to lose that defense, they're going to lose that rebounding, they're going to be different in transition because he's a guy that if he gets a steal, gets a board, he's immediately pushing the ball up, or if someone else gets a steal, he's immediately pushing up the court and running. He is like a freight train at 6'7", 285, and he is just running, and you don't want to be in front of that freight train. It's like Dave said on the fast break. You'd go to take a charge. If I went to take a charge from Zion Williamson, I'd have a concussion. I might even be dead because he might force me so far into the ground that I'd be in my own grave with how fast he goes. So for me, that's the most important one, is Zion Williamson. If he stays healthy, this team has a shot to go undefeated with all 3 of them. But even if one of the other ones goes down, he's the catalyst where if he's healthy, this team will be in contention to win the title this year.
I would agree with you. I think Zion Williamson is kind of the glue that can keep it all together because of the points that you made. And he's almost definitely the biggest guy on the floor when they're playing at 6'7", 285. I mean, as people have pointed out, he's bigger than many NBA players.
Yeah.
And that's really saying something. So it's going to be interesting to see how this season plays out. The games I'm really interested in are going to be the conference games, the 2 games against North Carolina, the 2 games against Virginia, because both of those teams, each and every year, you talk about, well, okay, they lost some people. How are they going to look? Well, those are teams that over the last couple of years, since I can really kind of remember, they've always done a good job of reloading. And that's because they've got good recruiting. They always go out, they make sure they're ready for the next year. They make sure they're ready for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And that's how they go out and they recruit. They're not always looking for next year, nor should they be. They're looking for the future, and that means multiple years. So, and that's what Duke continues to do. And Coach K needs to be given a whole lot of credit. He's been doing this a long time, and he has really never failed at doing this. He's a great coach. He has a great eye for talent, and talent wants to win. Guys want to win, and it's really easy to get these guys when almost every season that's what you're doing. You are winning. Mm-hmm. Like I mentioned earlier, Duke hasn't won a national championship since the 2014-2015 season. They're an early favorite to do it now, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, the last thing that I will kind of say in this is that everything that you just said is spot on. The one that I'm looking at is I want to see that first matchup. It's around my birthday. One's on the 14th of January. The next one is on the 19th. I'm looking at the 2 games in a row where they've got Syracuse on a Monday. Then on that Saturday, they've got Virginia. And that's going to be the first part where I feel like this team really faces adversity playing tough opponents 2 times in a row. And we'll see how we do there. And then go on into, because later in the year, they play the Tar Heels twice. Like you mentioned, they play Virginia and Syracuse again. But that first meeting between the Orange and the Cavaliers, I want to see those 2 teams going up against Duke for that first time this year. But this is where we're going to turn it on to you guys. Let us know what you think down below in that comment section. Will Duke go undefeated? Brandon says no. I say yes, they will. And they will be the undefeated champions this year. Let us know what you guys are thinking down below in that comment section.